When we think about upgrading the technology in our lives, there's this like built-in expectation of instant binary transformation.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, like you get a notification on your phone, you tap update software, the screen goes black for a minute or two, and then boom, it restarts.
And you have a completely new operating system.
Exactly. The old bugs are gone, the new features are, fully integrated. And I think we want our own lives to work exactly like that.
We really do.
We scroll through social media, we read some, motivational quote, we mentally click update, and we expect to wake up the next day as the person who goes to the gym at 5 in the morning, naturally craves kale over carbohydrates, and is suddenly fluent in conversational French.
Right. It is the ultimate modern fantasy. I mean, we basically treat our brains like hardware waiting for a firmware patch. But then you actually step into the world of human neurodevelopment, and, well, you realize the software update model is completely broken. We are looking at a landscape of human behavior that is incredibly messy, it's nonlinear, and it is deeply resistant to sudden overhauls.
Which is exactly why we're doing this today. So welcome to the deep dive. We know you're here because you want to be well-informed without, drowning in that endless, disconnected ocean of self-help blogs.
Right, you want the signal through the noise.
Exactly. And today, our mission isn't to just pump you up with fleeting motivation, because let's be real, motivation is a feeling, and feelings fade by, Tuesday.
They absolutely do.
So our mission is to crack the biological and psychological code of behavior change. We're taking a really rigorous look at one of the most culturally dominant frameworks of the last decade, which is James Clear's wildly successful book, Atomic Habits.
But we aren't just giving you a book report here.
No. We are synthesizing a pretty dynamic stack of sources today. We've got summaries of Atomic Habits, we've got Clear's own writings on environment design, but we're also bringing in a peer-reviewed critical analysis from the International Journal of Social Impact.
Which is fascinating, but
Oh, it really is. Plus, we have an article applying these concepts to business leadership and a really sharp comparative analysis between Atomic Habits and behavioral scientist B.J. Fogg's book, Tiny Habits.
Because, we have to look at the mechanics of change from multiple angles. We've got the cognitive science of how a habit loop actually fires in your brain, the environmental design tactics to hack that loop, and the systemic critiques that question whether this hyper-individualistic approach actually works for everyone.
Right. But before we even get to the mechanics of building a habit, we kind of have to dismantle a fundamental myth about success. It's a myth that, honestly, almost everyone listening right now probably believes.
Oh, for sure.
And it's the concept of the goal. We're conditioned to believe that everything starts with this massive, audacious goal.
It is deeply ingrained in our culture. I mean, setting a goal feels really productive.
It does. You write it down and you feel great.
Right, but the underlying mathematics of behavior change reveal that focusing on goals is, it's actually a structural trap. And Clear introduces a concept called the 1% rule, which essentially takes the financial concept of compound interest and applies it to human behavior.
Okay, let's explore the math on that, because the whole premise of an atomic habit is that it is, practically microscopic. Clear isn't asking for a massive overhaul here.
Not at all. The math is stark, and it operates on a completely different timeline than we're used to.
Okay, walk me through it.
So if you can get just 1% better at something each day for 1 year, you do not end up simply 3 times better or, 5 times better.
Right.
Because of the compounding effect, you end up roughly 37 times better by the end of the year.
Wait, 37 times better just by making a tiny, almost invisible change?
Exactly. It's writing one single paragraph. It's putting your running shoes by the door.
That is wild.
And the inverse is equally powerful and honestly somewhat terrifying.
Oh, no.
Yeah. If you get 1% worse each day for 1 year, like skipping the workout, eating the junk food, doom scrolling for an extra hour, your skills or your health decline nearly all the way down to 0.
Wow.
What starts as a seemingly insignificant win or, a minor setback, it accumulates into a massive, unbridgeable gap over time.
Okay, I hear that, but let me push back just a little bit here. If I want to be 37 times better at something, don't I need a massive goal to point my compass toward?
Right.
Because every New Year's Eve, people write down these huge outcomes, lose 30 pounds, write a novel, double my income. If we don't have the goal, how do we know what direction the 1% is supposed to compound toward?
You need a general direction, certainly. But Clear's really disruptive argument here is that once you know the direction, you actually need to forget about the goal entirely.
Forget the goal.
Yes. And focus literally all of your energy on your systems. He points out a critical flaw in goal-oriented thinking, which is that winners and losers have the exact same goals.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, every Olympian standing on the starting block wants the gold medal.
Exactly.
Every candidate sitting in the waiting room for an interview wants the job.
Right. Therefore, the goal itself cannot be what differentiates them. If the outcome is the same in everyone's mind, the variable that actually dictates success is the system they use to get there.
That makes total sense.
Furthermore, achieving a goal is only a momentary, fleeting change. I mean, think about the classic example of cleaning a messy room.
Oh, I know this one well. You summon all this willpower, you spend 3 hours on a Saturday cleaning, and the room looks amazing.
You achieved the goal. But if you maintain the exact same sloppy habits that led to the messy room in the first place...
Like dropping your clothes on the floor or leaving coffee cups on your desk.
Exactly. If you keep doing that, you'll be looking at a new pile of clutter by Wednesday. You treated a symptom without curing the underlying cause.
Right.
And goals also artificially restrict your happiness. They create this binary psychological state, like once I reach my goal, then I will be happy.
Yeah, we're always delaying our own satisfaction.
Exactly. And perhaps most dangerously, goals are often at odds with long-term progress.
How so?
Well, when all of your neurological drive is focused on a specific outcome, what is there to push you forward the day after you achieve it?
Oh, right, like the yo-yo diet effect.
Precisely. It is why so many people run a marathon and then don't run another mile for 6 months. The goal was achieved, so the system collapsed.
Man, I've always thought about this through the lens of a road trip. Like, goals are the destination entered into the GPS, but systems are the engine of the car.
Well, like that.
You can stare at the map all day, you can obsess over that little blue dot arriving at the destination, but without the engine actually firing, turning over, and running continuously, you are not moving an inch.
The system is the engine. And that engine is constructed entirely out of habits. But to truly build an engine that runs autonomously, we have to look at the architecture of behavior itself.
Okay, let's pop the hood.
Clear outlined 3 layers of behavior change. And I find it really helpful to visualize this as an onion.
Okay, let's peel back the layers of the onion.
So the outermost layer of the onion is your outcomes. This is what you get: losing the weight, publishing the book, winning the championship.
Your destination on the GPS.
Exactly. And when we set goals, we are almost always operating at this superficial outer layer. The middle layer is your processes. This is what you do.
Okay, so like the actions.
Right. It's implementing the new routine at the gym, practicing the piano scales for 20 minutes, decluttering your desk every evening. Most of the habits you attempt to build are associated with this middle level.
The mechanics of the engine.
And then the deepest layer, the absolute core of the onion, is your identity. This is what you believe. It encompasses your worldview, your self-image, your deep-seated judgments about yourself and others.
Okay, so just to recap that, outcomes are what you get, processes are what you do, and identity is what you believe.
Yes. And the fundamental mistake almost everyone makes is the direction of their intended change. We naturally work from the outside in.
Oh, right.
We start at the surface and say, I want to lose 30 pounds, which is the outcome. Therefore, I will go to the gym 4 days a week, which is the process. And hopefully, eventually, I will become a healthy person, which is the identity.
We basically wait for the identity to show up as a byproduct of the misery we're putting ourselves through.
Which rarely holds up under pressure. The most durable way to change your behavior is to build identity-based habits. You have to start at the core of the onion and work outwards.
So you don't start with the outcome.
No, you do not start by focusing on what you want to achieve. You start by focusing on who you wish to become.
You know, there's an anecdote in the source material about James Clear's wife when she was in high school that illustrates this beautifully.
Yes, the name-remembering story.
Right. So on the very first day of class, the teacher asked everyone to introduce themselves. And afterward, the teacher asked if anyone in the room could remember everyone's name.
Which triggers an immediate anxiety response in most people.
Oh, total panic. I would freeze. But his wife raised her hand and proceeded to accurately name all 30 people in the room.
Wow.
The guy sitting next to her was so stunned, he looked over and said, I couldn't even remember your name.
That's hilarious.
But the crucial part of the story isn't just that she had a good memory trick. It's what happened internally. She said that moment was a deeply affirming experience for her. She walked away from that classroom thinking, I am the type of person who is good at remembering people's names.
She anchored a completely new identity.
Exactly. And to this day, she remains excellent at remembering the names of everyone she meets. Because she isn't waking up trying to achieve a goal of remembering names. She isn't, forcing a process. She's simply acting in accordance with her own self-image.
Because true behavior change is identity change. Your current behaviors are simply a physical reflection of your current identity. If you want to change your behavior permanently, you have to start believing new things about yourself.
But you can't just look in the mirror and chant affirmations.
No. You have to decide the type of person you want to be, and then you must prove it to yourself with small wins.
So every action you take is essentially a vote for the type of person you wish to become.
That's exactly it. It is an evidentiary process. No single instance of going to the gym will transform your beliefs overnight. But as the votes build up, the evidence of your new identity becomes undeniable to your own brain.
I love that.
If you write one terrible paragraph a day, you are casting a vote that you are a writer. If you do 10 modified push-ups against a wall every morning, you are casting a vote that you are an athlete.
So, okay, if identity is the engine block, and these tiny daily votes are the spark plugs firing, how do we biologically wire the car to run automatically? Because it's one thing to say, I am a writer now, but it's an entirely different battle to actually sit down at a blank screen without feeling that intense, crushing resistance.
Friction is real.
It really is. And I think this brings us to the physical structure of the brain itself.
It does. We really need to bridge the gap between psychology and neurology here. And to understand why change feels so difficult, we look at a fascinating 2007 study from Oxford University that was highlighted in our sources.
Okay.
Researchers used advanced imaging to compare the brains of newborn babies to normal adult brains. And the findings were entirely counterintuitive.
How so?
The average newborn baby has 41% more neurons than the average adult.
Wait, 41% more?
Yes.
That sounds completely backward on the surface. Like, if babies have almost double the brain cells, shouldn't they be doing calculus? Why are adults the ones managing complex tasks if our brains are physically diminished?
It comes down to a fundamental biological imperative, which is energy conservation. The human brain is a massive energy sink. I mean, it consumes about 20% of your body's calories, despite being a fraction of its weight.
Wow, 20%.
Yeah. So when a baby is born, their brain is like a dense, overgrown, chaotic forest. Everything is a possibility, but there are no clear, efficient paths.
Okay, I can picture that.
As you interact with the world, your brain pays intense attention to what you actually do, and it begins a process called synaptic pruning.
Synaptic pruning.
Right. Think of a synapse as a microscopic bridge connecting two neurons. The brain ruthlessly prunes away the bridges you do not use, and it heavily fortifies the bridges you use frequently.
So if I start playing the piano when I'm 10 years old and I practice every day for hours,
your brain physically restructures itself. It wraps those specific neural pathways in a fatty substance called myelin.
Myelin, okay.
Which acts like insulation on an electrical wire, allowing the signals to travel faster and more efficiently. So the more you play the piano, the stronger, faster, and more insulated those connections become.
You're paving a multi-lane, high-speed neural superhighway.
Exactly. Meanwhile, someone who never plays an instrument is losing those potential pathways. Their brain prunes those unused connections to allocate precious energy to the things they do practice, whether that's reading, playing sports, or worrying.
Okay, but this presents a massive problem for you, the listener, if you're trying to build a new habit.
It does.
If our adult brains are already aggressively pruned, if we have these massive insulated superhighways built for our current routines, like coming home from work, collapsing on the couch, and scrolling through social media for 2 hours.
A very common superhighway.
Doesn't that mean learning new habits is biologically working against our own architecture? Like, how do we hack an adult brain that has already paved its roads and burned the alternatives?
That is the central dilemma of adult behavior change. And the answer isn't to grab a mental machete and try to chop a brand new path through the overgrown forest using sheer willpower.
Which is what we always try to do.
Always. But willpower requires the prefrontal cortex, which burns an enormous amount of energy and fatigues very quickly. The real answer is to co-opt the superhighways that already exist. This is the mechanism behind a concept called habit stacking.
So instead of trying to clear-cut a new path in the forest, you're saying we should just find a highway that's already built like my morning coffee routine and set up a toll booth for a new habit right there.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. Habit stacking is taking advantage of deeply wired, highly myelinated synaptic connections to anchor a completely new, fragile behavior.
Right.
You already have habits that are so strong, you perform them subconsciously. You turn on a coffee maker, you take your shoes off when you walk in the door, you brush your teeth. Your brain has perfected these routines. They require zero cognitive friction.
Yeah, I do them on autopilot.
Exactly. So instead of trying to build a new habit in a vacuum, you stack the new behavior directly on top of the old one.
You piggyback on the existing infrastructure.
Yes. And to understand the broader psychological context of this, we look at a concept called implementation intention, which was heavily researched by psychologist Peter M. Gollwitzer.
Okay, let's unpack the mechanics of implementation intention. Like, why does it actually work?
Normally, when people want to change, they rely on vague, floating intentions. I am going to read more. I am going to eat healthier.
Very common resolutions.
Right. But Gollwitzer found that these vague intentions fail because they require you to make a conscious decision in the moment when you are likely tired or distracted.
Yeah.
He discovered that if you connect an expected behavior with a specific situational cue, your success rate skyrockets. The formula is essentially, if situation X occurs, I will perform action Y. You are preloading the decision, delegating the trigger to the environment rather than your internal motivation.
And Clear refines this specifically for daily habits.
He does. He uses the formula. After current habit, I will new habit. But the nuance here is critical. The cue must be highly specific, immediate, and unambiguous.
Which is where I think most people completely derail.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, we think we're being specific, but we're leaving massive loopholes for our brains to exploit. In one of the source articles, Clear actually shares a personal failure with this exact concept.
He did, yes.
He wanted to start a push-up habit. So his habit stack was, when I take a break for lunch, I will do 10 push-ups.
Which sounds completely reasonable and specific to most people.
It does. Like, I would write that down. But he quickly realized the trigger was way too vague. Taking a break for lunch is a fuzzy concept. Does he do the push-ups before he eats the sandwich? After he eats? Does he do them in the kitchen while the microwave is running? In his home office?
Right. There are too many options.
Exactly. That ambiguity created friction, and the friction killed the habit. He had to rewrite the stack to be hyper-specific. When I close my laptop for lunch, I will immediately do 10 push-ups next to my desk.
The physical act of the laptop snapping shut is the undeniable trigger. There is no ambiguity. You do not have to negotiate with yourself.
It's an automatic sequence.
And it is also important to note that James Clear actually credits behavioral scientist B.J. Fogg for pioneering this exact method.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Fogg refers to it as anchoring in his tiny habits methodology. The deeply ingrained old habit serves as the heavy anchor that prevents the fragile new habit from drifting away in the currents of daily stress.
That's a great visual. So, okay, we have the mathematics of the 1% rule, we have the identity shift at the core of the onion, and we have the neurological hack of habit stacking, using the pruned neural pathways we've already paved.
Yes.
Knowing how to anchor a habit is incredibly powerful, but it still feels like we need a comprehensive operating manual. What happens when the anchor is set, but the new habit still feels terrible? How do we ensure the behavior actually sticks day after day?
This is where we transition into the operational core of Clear's work, which is the 4 laws of behavior change. To utilize the laws, you first must understand the underlying neurological loop that drives every single action you take.
Okay, lay it out for me.
Every habit progresses through 4 distinct stages. Cue, craving, response, and reward.
Cue, craving, response, reward.
Exactly. The cue is a piece of information that triggers your brain to initiate a behavior. It predicts a reward. The craving is the motivational force behind the habit. And it is vital to understand that you do not crave the habit itself. You crave the change in state it delivers.
So, like, you don't crave smoking a cigarette. You crave the feeling of chemical relief and the dopamine release.
Precisely. The response is the actual physical or mental action you perform. And the reward is the end goal. It satisfies the craving, and crucially, it teaches your brain whether this particular loop is worth remembering for the future.
So if any one of those 4 pillars collapses, the habit fails to form.
Absolutely. If you eliminate the cue, the habit simply never triggers. If you reduce the craving, you won't generate the activation energy required to act. If you make the response too difficult, Your physical or mental limitations will prevent it. And if the reward fails to satisfy your desire, your brain will not encode the loop.
Okay, so CLEAR takes this biological loop and translates it into a practical, actionable framework.
Yes.
The 4 laws to build a good habit are: make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying.
Correct.
And the genius is that if you want to break a bad habit, you simply invert the laws, right? Make it invisible, make it unattractive, make it difficult, and make it unsatisfying.
Exactly.
Let's dig into the concept of making it obvious, because this brings up the idea of environment design.
Environment design is arguably the most powerful lever we have, primarily because human beings consistently overestimate their own willpower.
Oh, guilty as charged.
We all do it. We operate under the illusion that we are in conscious control of our daily choices. But the cognitive science suggests that our environment quietly dictates the default option, and we almost always choose the default.
Right. The environment is the invisible hand steering the wheel. We think we're thoughtfully navigating the turns, but the civil engineers who built the road actually decided our route long before we got in the car.
That is a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And the data supporting this is staggering. The sources provide a landmark example, the organ donor study.
Oh, this one blew my mind.
It's incredible. It was conducted by Eric Johnson at Columbia University and Daniel Goldstein at the London Business School. They analyzed organ donation rates across 11 different European countries.
The discrepancies in this study are just mind-blowing.
They completely defy logical explanation until you look at the environment. You have countries like Denmark, where a mere 4% of the population chose to be organ donors.
4%, okay.
And then right next door, in Sweden, a country that shares a highly similar culture, geography, and socioeconomic makeup, almost 86% of the population chose to donate.
I mean, are we supposed to believe that Swedish citizens are just exponentially more altruistic and morally elevated than Danish citizens?
Not at all. When the researchers dug into the data, the entire difference came down to the graphic design of the form they received from the government.
A piece of paper.
A literal piece of paper dictated a massive national health outcome. Denmark, with the 4% donation rate, utilized an opt-in form. It essentially said, check this box if you want to be an organ donor.
Okay.
Sweden, with the 86% rate, utilized an opt-out form. It said, check this box if you do not want to be an organ donor.
So in both countries, the vast majority of people simply did not check the box.
Exactly. When faced with a complex, emotionally heavy decision like contemplating your own mortality, deciding what happens to your body, the cognitive burden is massive.
Yeah, nobody wants to think about that on a Tuesday afternoon at the DMV.
Right. So the brain defaults to the path of least resistance. It chooses the default option assigned by the environment. Being an organ donor feels like a deeply personal philosophical choice, but the reality is that your decision is heavily manipulated by the architect of the form.
That is deeply unsettling, to realize how easily our profound moral choices can be swayed by a checkbox.
It is a little scary.
But if we flip the perspective, it's also incredibly empowering. If a simple shift in a default option can drastically alter behavior at a macroscopic national level, imagine the leverage we have if we intentionally design the microscopic environments of our own homes and offices.
And that is the core of making it obvious. You manipulate the visual cues. If your goal is to eat more vegetables, the research suggests buying dark green plates.
Wait, really? The color of the plate matters?
Yes. The visual contrast makes the brain perceive a smaller portion of carbohydrates and subconsciously leads you to serve yourself 30% more greens.
That is fascinating.
Another example. If you want to build a habit of flossing, do not hide the floss in a bathroom drawer out of sight. Buy a small glass bowl, fill it with pre-made flossers, and place it directly next to your toothbrush.
So you literally can't ignore it.
Exact.
And when we invert this to break a bad habit,
You make the cue invisible. Consider the modern living room. In almost every home across the world, all the furniture, the sofa, the armchairs, the coffee table is oriented to point directly at the television screen.
well, yeah, where else would it point?
Right. But the physical space is engineered to make mindlessly watching TV the absolute default behavior the moment you sit down.
Oh, wow. I never thought about that.
If you want to watch less television, you have to disrupt the environment. You turn the chairs to face each other. You take the batteries out of the remote and put them in a kitchen drawer. You add a physical hurdle.
Okay, so we've manipulated the visual cues. We've made the good habits obvious and the bad ones invisible. But what about the craving? Like, how do we make a habit attractive? Because let's be honest, waking up to go for a run at 6 in the morning in the freezing rain is never going to be inherently attractive, no matter how obvious I make my running shoes.
This leads us into the psychology of motivation and dopamine anticipation. The more attractive an opportunity is, the more likely it is to become habit-forming. And to manufacture attraction artificially, the sources highlight a behavioral economic strategy called temptation bundling.
Temptation bundling. This is a concept coined by Catherine Milkman, right?
Yes, Catherine Milkman. Temptation bundling is the practice of linking an action you want to do with an action you need to do.
Okay.
It is essentially giving yourself permission to indulge in a highly anticipated reward, but only while performing the difficult habit.
Give me an example.
It's allowing yourself to listen to your favorite guilty pleasure true crime podcast, but strictly limiting that listening time to when you are cleaning the kitchen or running on the treadmill. You are bundling the visceral temptation of the entertainment with the friction of the chore.
Now, one of the sources, the peer-reviewed analysis from the International Journal of Social Impact, makes a really nuanced distinction here between temptation bundling and an older concept called the Premack principle. I think it's worth untangling those.
It is a vital distinction, absolutely.
Yeah.
The Premack principle is named after psychologist David Premack, and it's commonly referred to as Grandma's rule.
Grandma's rule.
Right. Grandma says you must eat your broccoli before you can have your ice cream. You utilize a highly probable, desirable behavior eating dessert to reinforce a less probable, undesirable behavior eating vegetables.
So it's sequential. I suffer through the hard thing first, and then I am granted the reward.
Exactly. The key difference is that temptation bundling happens simultaneously. You listen to the music while you clean the room. The reward is infused directly into the execution of the difficult task.
Ah, I see.
This fundamentally alters your experience in real time, making the friction of the task itself feel more attractive because your brain is actively receiving dopamine from the bundled temptation.
So I've bought the green plates, I've put my running shoes by the door, and I'm bundling my favorite podcast with my workout. I've made it obvious and attractive.
You're halfway there.
But my brain still looks at a 45-minute workout block on my calendar and says, absolutely not, we do not have the energy for that.
Yes, the dread.
How do we overcome that initial wall of intense friction?
We rely on the law of least effort. Human beings, shaped by evolutionary biology, will naturally gravitate toward the option that requires the lowest expenditure of energy. This is why Clear is so militant about the 2-minute rule.
The rule that says when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to complete.
Yes.
Which always sounds ridiculous to people. Like, I'm going to the gym to work out for 2 minutes. What's the point?
The point is that you are not trying to get in shape. You are trying to master the gateway to the habit. You do not start by trying to write a full chapter of a novel. You start by opening your laptop, writing one single sentence, and closing it. The mantra here is, you have to standardize a behavior before you can optimize it.
Standardize before you optimize. We are so conditioned to jump straight to optimization.
Oh, completely.
Someone decides they want to run, so they immediately buy $200 running shoes, download a complex interval tracking app, and map out a 10-mile route before they've even proven they can put their shoes on 3 days in a row.
Which inevitably triggers massive decision fatigue. If every time you attempt to engage in a new habit, it requires a heavy cognitive load to execute, your amygdala, the part of your brain that processes fear and resistance, will eventually initiate a shutdown.
It just nopes out of there.
It really does. By intentionally shrinking the behavior to 2 minutes, you bypass the amygdala's alarm system. You lower the activation energy required to such a minuscule level that your brain cannot justify saying no.
Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. We've done the 2-minute habit. How do we make sure we come back tomorrow? We have to make it satisfying.
Yes, and this is a direct, contemporary application of B.F. Skinner's theory of operant conditioning.
B.F. Skinner. The famous psychological experiments with the rat in the box, pushing a lever to receive a food pellet.
Precisely. The fundamental axiom of operant conditioning is that behavior which is immediately rewarded is likely to be repeated, and behavior which is punished is likely to be avoided. Yeah. But the critical modifier for human habit formation is the word immediate. The reward must be prompt.
Which is the exact opposite of how almost every beneficial human habit functions.
Sadly, yes.
If I go to the gym today, the reward, a longer lifespan, a fit physique, is months or years away in the future. The punishment, aching muscles, sweating, exhaustion, is immediate.
You've just described the fundamental mismatch of human evolution. We evolved in an immediate return environment. If our ancestors found a berry, they ate it immediately to survive. Our brains are hardwired to prioritize instant gratification.
Right.
But modern society operates in a delayed return environment. You work for 2 weeks before you get a paycheck. You study for 4 years to get a degree. Good habits require you to endure immediate pain for delayed rewards, while bad habits offer immediate rewards with delayed pain.
Like smoking a cigarette feels great instantly, but the lung cancer doesn't arrive for decades.
Exactly.
So how do we bridge that evolutionary gap?
You have to artificially manufacture an immediate reward for your good habits. And this is the psychological mechanism behind habit trackers. Our sources included visual templates of habit trackers, those grids with the months across the top and the days down the side.
Right. It seems so simple, almost childish. Why does drawing an X in a box work?
The physical act of crossing off a day on a calendar or filling in a square on a grid provides an immediate visual and tactile micro-reward. It releases a tiny hit of dopamine. You don't have to wait 6 months to see the scale move. You get the satisfaction of keeping the streak alive the exact moment you finish the 2-minute habit.
And I noticed those tracker templates from our sources included some powerful philosophical quotes at the bottom of the grid.
It did.
There was one from F.M. Alexander. People do not decide their futures. They decide their habits, and their habits decide their futures. And one from the Roman poet Ovid. Nothing is stronger than habit. It serves as a constant visual tether back to that identity layer we talked about peeling back earlier.
It perfectly bridges the gap. It connects the immediate primal satisfaction of checking a box with the profound long-term shift of your identity.
Okay, let's pause and shift our perspective a bit here. Because up to this point, we have essentially been treating you, the listener, like a solitary organism in a vacuum.
Right, like you're the only person on Earth.
Yeah, we've talked about your individual brain, your personal living room, your private calendar. But human beings don't live in a vacuum. What happens when we take these atomic habits and try to scale them up?
That's where it gets complicated.
What happens when you are trying to change behavior in an office or on a sports team or within a massive social group?
This is where the business application source from Toby Sinclair provides incredible, necessary context. Because when we move from the isolated individual to the organization, the power of the environment becomes exponentially more dominant.
How so?
Well, Sinclair references a foundational equation from psychologist Kurt Lewin, developed in 1936.
We brought math into biology, now we're bringing math into sociology.
It's all connected. It is a very simple equation, but it changed the field of organizational psychology. The equation is B equals F of P comma E. Behavior is a function of the person in their environment.
Behavior is a function of the person in their environment, so you cannot isolate the employee's performance from the culture of the office they're sitting in.
Exactly. And the major business takeaway from applying Clear's work to Lewin's equation is a radical shift in management philosophy. Fix the system, not the people.
Which goes against every instinct a manager or a CEO has.
It really does.
If I am a team leader, and my team is repeatedly failing to adapt to a new software workflow, my immediate visceral instinct is to blame their mindset. I assume they're lazy, they're stubborn, or they just lack motivation. How does this framework force a manager to challenge that instinct?
It challenges it by exposing a pervasive psychological blind spot called the fundamental attribution bias.
Fundamental attribution bias.
Yes. This is a cognitive bias where we have a profound tendency to underestimate the impact of the environment and vastly overestimate the impact of an individual's personality or disposition when judging their actions.
Like, if an employee is late, we just assume they're disorganized.
Exactly. We ignore the fact that the parking structure was redesigned and caused a bottleneck. If an organization's behavior is failing, it is almost entirely a system problem, not a people problem.
Because if the corporate environment makes the bad habit obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying, of course the people are going to do it. We can't blame the rat for pushing the lever if we put the lever right in front of him and made it dispense candy.
Precisely. And in a social or corporate setting, the environment isn't just physical desks and software. It is largely made up of social norms. Humans are deeply social, herd animals. We possess a desperate evolutionary drive to belong to the tribe because isolation historically meant death.
Right.
So we instinctively imitate the habits of 3 specific groups: the close, the many, and the powerful.
Let's break those down. First, the close.
We unconsciously pick up the habits of the people in our immediate proximity. The data on social contagion is staggering. One study highlighted in the research showed that a person's chance of becoming obese increases by 57% if a close friend becomes obese.
57%. Your biological reality shifts dramatically simply because your friend gained weight. That is wild.
It really is.
What about the many?
When we are unsure of how to act in a given situation, we look to the broader group for cues. Sinclair shares a fascinating behavioral study about chimpanzees.
Oh, I love monkey studies.
If a chimp learns a highly effective, optimized method for cracking nuts while isolated in one group, but is then moved to a new group of chimps that uses a vastly inferior, inefficient method, the new chimp will actually abandon their superior method and adopt the bad one.
Just to blend in.
Just to blend in. The evolutionary reward of being accepted by the new tribe and avoiding ostracization is vastly greater than the caloric reward of cracking the nut efficiently. Human beings are no different. We would rather be wrong with the crowd than right by ourselves.
Man, that explains so much about toxic corporate culture.
Doesn't it?
And finally, we imitate the powerful.
We copy the habits of leaders and high-status individuals because we are drawn to behaviors that earn prestige. We mimic the CEO's communication style. We work late if the manager works late. If the behavior of the most powerful people in an organization does not change, the culture of the organization will never change, no matter how many memos are sent out.
So let's make this practical. If I am a leader and I want to build a culture of, say, continuous, honest feedback, which is notoriously difficult to implement, how do I use the 4 laws of behavior change to engineer the system rather than just yelling at the team to communicate better?
Sinclair outlines a brilliant practical example of this. First, Law 1, make it obvious. You don't bury the feedback form in an intranet portal. You provide your influential leaders with a stack of brightly colored physical index cards and place them squarely on their desks. The visual cue is omnipresent.
Nice. Law 2, make it attractive.
You change the perception. Instead of feedback being a scary formal review, the physical act of receiving and giving a tangible card builds a moment of human connection, which satisfies our primal desire to bond with the close.
Law 3, make it easy.
You utilize the 2-minute rule. You provide template prompts printed directly on the cards. The leader does not have to stare at a blank screen and invent eloquent feedback from scratch. They simply fill in the blank and hand it over.
And Law 4, make it satisfying.
The immediate, positive, face-to-face interaction of handing the card over serves as the prompt reward. This same behavioral engineering is why tools like Kanban, boards those visual project management tools with columns for to-do, doing, and done, are so overwhelmingly popular in agile business environments.
Oh yeah, people love those.
They make the workflow completely obvious. The physical or digital movement of the card is attractive and easy, and dragging a complex task into the done column provides an immediate, visceral dopamine hit. It is incredibly satisfying.
It really is just behavioral engineering at scale. Listening to all of this, it sounds like James Clear has handed us a flawless, universal operating manual for human existence.
It presents itself as a flawless manual, but a true deep dive requires us to step back and apply a critical lens. And our sources suggest that Clear's approach, while undeniably effective for many, might contain some significant structural blind spots.
Yes, let's pivot into the critical pushback, because no framework, no matter how many millions of copies it sells, is perfect. We have this dense, peer-reviewed paper from the International Journal of Social Impact, authored by researchers Fatima and Chakraborty. They take a hard look at the theoretical and cultural foundations of the book. What is their primary overarching critique?
The primary critique is that Atomic Habits is a highly Western, hyper-individualistic text.
Okay.
It places an overwhelming emphasis on individual responsibility and personal autonomy, while largely ignoring deeply entrenched systemic barriers, mental health pathologies, and socioeconomic limitations.
So it is essentially the classic American pull yourself up by your bootstraps mythology, just repackaged and validated with neurobiology.
That is precisely their argument. The paper points out a massive cultural blind spot. If you live in a collectivist culture, say, in many parts of Asia or the Middle East, or in a society where daily behavior is heavily dictated by multi-generational family expectations and tight-knit communal structures, you cannot simply design your environment at will.
Right.
Your physical and social environment is fundamentally shared. Your choices are not solely your own to dictate.
Yeah, telling someone to just change their visual cues or rearrange their living room assumes a level of spatial and financial autonomy that millions of people simply do not have. It ignores the reality of poverty, systemic inequality, or severe trauma.
It does. It assumes a baseline of stability and control that is a privilege, not a universal given. And this critique of systemic limitations ties perfectly into the second major piece of pushback we found in the comparative analysis between James Clear's Atomic Habits and B.J. Fogg's Tiny Habits.
This is a really vital comparison because Clear and Fogg are constantly mentioned in the same breath in the productivity space. Clear even openly credits Fogg's research in his book, but when you drill down, their underlying philosophies and their intended audiences are actually quite divergent.
Very divergent. The comparison piece highlights the profound difference in their professional backgrounds and their evidence base. James Clear is fundamentally a blogger, a journalist, and a brilliant synthesizer of information.
Which is a skill in itself.
Absolutely. But his methodology involves looking at top performers, Olympic gold medalists, billionaire CEOs, star comedians, and reverse engineering the tactics they use to achieve elite status.
So he's studying the absolute statistical outliers, whereas B.J. Fogg is a clinical behavioral scientist.
Exactly. Fogg founded the Behavior Design Lab at Stanford University. And more importantly, the data set for his book isn't based on elite athletes. It is based on his personal coaching of over 40,000 ordinary people.
40,000? That's a massive sample size.
It is. Not billionaires trying to optimize their morning routine, just regular people trying to eat a little better or stop yelling at their kids after a stressful workday or recover from a massive life setback.
So how does that difference in audience change the actual advice they give? Let's take Breaking Bad Habits, for example. We talked earlier about Clear's inversion of the laws. Make it invisible, make it difficult. Clear basically tells us to engineer a cold turkey environment. He says to make the bad habit literally impossible. Delete the social media app permanently, ban yourself from the casino, unplug the television, and lock the remote control in a timed safe.
Yes, very extreme measures.
But B.J. Fogg argues against that level of extreme environmental restriction, doesn't he?
Fogg argues that relying on extreme environmental restriction or intense motivation is a fragile last resort strategy. He views bad habits not as a switch you can turn off by locking a door, but as a giant, complex, deeply tangled knot.
A tangled knot.
Yes, you cannot just slice through the knot with sheer force. You have to slowly, methodically untangle it, one tiny loop at a time.
Which approach is actually more realistic for you, our listener? Like, if I want to stop doom scrolling, do I lock my phone in another room, or do I untangle the knot?
It depends entirely on your current life stage and your aspiration. The author of the comparative analysis brilliantly summarizes the difference by arguing that Atomic Habits is a smorgasbord, while Tiny Habits is a set menu.
A smorgasbord versus a set menu. Walk me through that analogy.
Clear offers dozens of different, sometimes contradictory tactics. You have temptation bundling, habit contracts, motivation rituals, environment design. You can walk along the buffet, pick and choose what resonates with you, and experiment to try and maximize your peak performance.
Sounds nice.
It is a smorgasbord of high-leverage ideas designed to vault you to the top of your field. Fogg, on the other hand, offers a single, unified, rigid methodology. It is a set recipe. You find an anchor, you attach a tiny behavior, and you celebrate instantly. That's it.
Much simpler.
And crucially, he stresses that you should never beat yourself up for slipping up. If you fail, it's a design flaw, not a moral failing. You simply tweak the recipe.
So Fogg's approach is significantly more gentle and forgiving.
Much gentler. And this introduces a classic concept in computer science and strategic decision-making called the explore-exploit trade-off.
The explore-exploit trade-off, how does that apply to habits?
It is the tension between seeking new information and utilizing the information you already have. Do you explore new options, trying out various tactics to see if there is something better out there? Or do you exploit the knowledge and systems you already possess to guarantee a consistent result?
I see.
Clear's book is phenomenal for exploration, generating a wealth of diverse ideas to see what sticks to your specific lifestyle. Fogg's book is designed for exploitation, taking one single, proven, cohesive system and riding it consistently to success.
So it's not that one is definitively right and the other is wrong. They both offer massive value. It really just comes down to what you fundamentally need right now.
Yeah.
If you are a young entrepreneur or competitive athlete looking to squeeze every possible ounce of optimization out of your day, Clear's expansive smorgasbord might be exactly the toolkit you need. But if you are a single parent or you're overwhelmed by a demanding job, exhausted, and just trying to untangle the knot of your daily survival without adding guilt and self-hatred to the mix, Fogg's gentle, scientific set menu might be the far superior play.
There are different tools designed to solve different problems at different stages of the behavioral journey.
Well, we have covered an incredible, expansive territory today. Let's do a quick synthesis of the journey we've taken you on.
We began by looking at the stark mathematics of the 1% rule, proving how tiny, invisible changes compound into massive realities over time. We dismantled the myth of the goal, revealing why systems are the true engines of progress.
We peeled back the layers of the onion to realize that durable change isn't about what you get, or even what you do. It's about who you fundamentally believe you are. It's identity change, proven to yourself day by day through small, undeniable wins.
We dove into the neurobiology of the newborn brain, understanding the process of synaptic pruning. We learned how to use habit stacking to bypass resistance by piggybacking new fragile behaviors onto the heavily myelinated neural superhighways we already possess.
We laid out the operational framework of the 4 laws of behavior change. Make it obvious through environment design. Make it attractive through temptation bundling. Make it easy by shrinking the task to bypass the amygdala, and make it satisfying by manufacturing immediate dopamine rewards.
We scaled those individual laws up to the corporate and social world, learning from Kurt Lewin that behavior is always a function of the person in their environment. We recognize that to change a culture, we must fix the system rather than blaming the people.
And finally, we leveled a critical eye at the self-help genre itself, balancing Clear's Western, optimization-heavy smorgasbord against the systemic realities of collectivist cultures and Fogg's gentle, scientifically grounded set menu.
When you view all of this in totality, it represents a profound paradigm shift in how we view our own autonomy.
It really does. Which brings us full circle, back to where we started. We all want that flawless software update. We want to read a single book, flip a switch, and instantly install Productivity OS 2.0. But your brain is not a hard drive, and your habits are not binary code. They are living, breathing pathways, deeply carved out by your daily environment, your social tribe, and your core identity.
And understanding that reality leads to a rather provocative question that we need to leave you with.
Right, because if our environment is the invisible hand shaping our behavior, steering the wheel of our choices, dictating our default options, and ultimately forging our identity, well, who exactly is designing your environment right now?
That is the ultimate question. If you aren't actively, intentionally designing your physical spaces, your digital inputs, and your social circles, you haven't magically opted out of environment design. You've simply handed the blueprint over to someone else.
Exactly. You are handing over the architectural blueprint of your own identity to tech algorithms, to massive corporations, to default social norms, and to marketers whose singular goal is to hijack your habit loops for their own profit. What if the most vital habit you can possibly build isn't exercising, or reading more books, or eating dark leafy greens? What if the absolute most vital habit is the habit of regularly, ruthlessly questioning the design of your own systems?
Are you the active architect of your environment, or are you just a passive consumer of a system designed by someone else?
Something to seriously mull over as you look around your living room or stare at your phone today. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.